Since Jules Verne inspired the helicopter and the submarine in the 1880s, science fiction has helped make fantastical technology a reality. But not every science fiction writer agrees.
I really hate the idea that science fiction writers predict anything. My stories resonate or seem to predict things that come in the future is only because I'm talking about things that are latent in the present day. I think the future is contestable.
I'm Michael Hainsworth, and this is Futurithmic.
I'm Cory Doctorow, and I write science fiction novels. I'm an activist. I work with Electronic Frontier Foundation, and I'm a journalist.
Cory Doctorow is a 21st century techno-geek activist.
I have my hopes for what the future might look like, where we seize the means of information and create human thriving and shared prosperity.
The author releases his books under the Creative Commons license and fights for the global liberalization of copyright law.
If you're going to organize any kind of protest movement, if you're going to exercise your right to free speech, excluding the digital from that is impossible.
And Cory exercises his rights on his digital domain, the website Boing Boing, where as editor he tackles topics like intellectual property law, politics, futurism, and the establishment.
Unlike traditional feudalism, where the aristocracy was flesh and blood, contemporary feudalism is one in which our aristocrats are transhuman artificial colony life forms called limited liability companies, and we humans are being relegated to the status of inconvenient gut flora.
His books are often cautionary tales of technology gone wrong, post-scarcity economics, and the breakdown of modern society. We went rummaging through a science fiction movie prop shop in Los Angeles to connect the dots between science and science fiction. We think about science fiction informing science.
Early days of science fiction included a lot of scientists who wrote it. A lot of science fiction, to the extent that it talks about science, revolves around the idea of a heroic individual inventor making a breakthrough.
The 1800s, Jules Verne, he was coming up with things that clearly didn't exist. Whereas today we talk about a lot of science fiction, even some of your own work is grounded in present-day technology thinking about the future.
There's a great concept called the adjacent possible. Why is it that technological breakthroughs seem to happen at the same time all around the world? Why is it that when it's railroad time, you get railroads? There have been a lot of these. The idea of fantastical uses for technology, those ideas come and go. And at a certain point, enough of the underlying infrastructure is in place that you can just go and grab parts off the shelf and bang them together, work out the kinks and get a helicopter or a TV or a mobile phone or any of these other devices, and then they just emerge all at once all around the world. I think that, you can think of science fiction writers as also being participants in the adjacent possible. Science fiction's made a lot of predictions, and if none of them had come true, it would be pretty remarkable, but we significantly underperform random chance, I think. I'm really skeptical that I know what the future looks like. I think that it's not just a fool's errand, but potentially really harmful to say that you know what the future looks like, again, because it leads to this kind of this kind of fatalism, that there's no reason to get out of bed in the morning.
Cornell University researchers found key ways that science fiction is cited as inspiration for actual scientists. Tech today that was theoretical to the science fiction authors at the time. There's the theoretical design research.
My canonical example is mobile phones, which are a staple of fiction, and which emerge when the adjacent possible arrives, right? When all the parts needed to make them arrives.
Number two, new interactions. The idea that we would talk to our computers someday and they'd understand us.
Some of the stuff that I'm interested in are things like Annalee Newitt's in her book Autonomous, where she talks about how, to the extent that we have devices that are smart or seem smart, and we're encouraged to treat them in ways that are cruel and inhumane, that we open this moral space for treating humans this way.
And that conversation's been extended into sex bots and virtual reality experiences where you can do tremendous harm and not feel like you've actually done anything wrong.
I think that works well and fails very badly. And I think that that's a thing science fiction's actually really good at, is talking about how things that work well can fail badly. And graceful failure modes, they are the watchword of good engineering, right? A good engineer is not someone who assumes that they've built a system that works so well that it'll never fail. They're someone who adds the warning lights and the red lights and the fail safes and the switch cover and so on. An engineer who thinks that things will never fail is not an optimist, they're an idiot. So designing for graceful failure modes is something science fiction can really help us with.
Human-robot interaction and artificial intelligence.
Computers are actually really good at doing things that humans are bad at. And machine learning, which is one of the ways that we improve computers' capability to do this stuff, is a good and efficient way to do some of that. I think one of the reasons that AI is such a moving goalpost is that we don't have a general agreement on what constitutes intelligence. More importantly, you know, we actually have like a giant surplus of human intelligence, right? It's called humans, right? We have a massive shortage of cognitive agents that are capable of doing things that humans suck at.
Oh, it sounds like you're working on another book where we just all get plugged into machines because humanity is the low-cost commodity here.
Well, not so much that as like there are a bunch of things that we really struggle to do, tasks that we struggle to do. A lot of our debate about like the end of labor, when we talk about the end of labor, a lot of it is saying like, well, here's the thing that's very choresome for humans and very easy for machines. Why don't we ask a machine to do it? But it's not intelligence as we understand it.
Looking at human-computer interaction.
Civil libertarians have sounded the alarm about that stuff since early on. And you know, the early days of the technology and civil liberties debate, part of the challenge was just convincing people that technology was implicated in civil liberties. There's a model I have for what happens with certain kinds of pernicious societal problems that I call the peak indifference model. And when you have a problem where cause and effect are separated by a lot of time and space, the first task that you have to overcome is convincing people that the problem even exists. By the time people actually recognize that there's a problem, it may be too late or it may seem too late to do something about it. And at that point, the job of the activist switches from trying to convince people to give up denialism to convincing them to give up nihilism. So science fiction can help move the point of peak denial, and it can help make people realize that solutions are possible. I think that it's very hard to understand activist causes when they start off. And one of the things that narrative can do is tell you the stories about what it might feel if the issues aren't dealt with in good time.
And Doctorow is one of those people who cares. His passion for social causes and his fears of a dystopian future are worked out here in his Burbank office, where his activism influences his narratives. His latest book, Radicalized, is a collection of 4 short stories about the technological fallout of corporate monopoly. It's as much a commentary on the current day as a prophecy of a future gone wrong.
Thanks to a constellation of really badly thought through technology laws, companies try a whole bunch of different tactics to make profits, where they lock, say, the pod to the coffee maker or the app store to the phone or engine parts to the engines. Companies have done that for a long time. If you look at old Edison phonograms, they say, you know, only to be used in conjunction with Edison record players, right?
Right.
And so the passage of these laws has taken what was always a bad practice and given it the force of law. You know, Lawrence Lessig, who's this great cyber lawyer, he has this idea that our world is regulated by 4 forces. By code, that's what's technologically possible. By law, that's what's legal. Markets, that's what's profitable. And norms, what's socially acceptable. But we have these 4 directions we can move in. And so sometimes when as far as you can get with, say, getting a law enacted has been reached, maybe you can make a technology that helps people just get around the edges of the law and try to break down the seemingly unassailable wall. I think that it's a mistake to say that all science fiction in which things go horribly wrong is dystopian. A dystopian view is that the world will collapse and that your neighbors will come over and eat you. But a utopian view is that the world will collapse and your neighbors will come over to make sure you're all right. And we always have agency. We always have the ability to change the future. So I think the future, rather than predicting it, it's much more useful and interesting to try and influence it.